Because they skipped a key portion of the process, and that is training. It's not unusual in the workplace, whether it's government, city, county, state, or federal, corporations, small, medium, or large, nonprofits, churches, academic institutions, 2-year community colleges, or 4-year accredited colleges and university. And there's many other institutions on the spectrum that I didn't name, but that's where the majority of people work in the marketplace.
Right.
We have been led to believe that that man or that woman who is an expert at what they do, they're super good. They know what they're doing. They understand that position like the back of their hand.
Right.
They could quote it. They could do it with a blindfold on. Well, let's give them a standing ovation. That does not mean that you are equipped, prepared, or ready to now lead people.
Right.
Your job, and this is something that I learned from Simon, your job as a leader, although we know you can do it, your job is to develop and provide resources.
You're listening to Lead with Dr. Ralph Hughes, leadership thought leader, author, and keynote speaker.
Hello, everyone. We're thrilled to have you join us for another insightful episode. This podcast is dedicated to bringing to light issues that hinder people in leadership positions and offers best practices from organizational leaders who got it right and industry experts who can share their perspectives. Today, we talk about leading with a servant's heart. Guiding us through this discussion and providing invaluable insight, I am honored to introduce our esteemed guest. He is an 8-time best-selling author and the former chief of staff for the United States Department of Defense. Our retired guest has enjoyed a 34-year career in government and private industry as a senior-level leader. He is the founder and chief executive of the Johnson Leadership Group. He provides organizations and the people who work within them with the tools to forge effective personnel and interpersonal communication. He delivers training on the elements of dynamic relationships to equip teams with the attitudes and attributes needed to develop individuals into leaders. He does so through motivating workshops, seminars, insightful keynote speeches, and compassionate coaching, all to encourage personal and professional growth. He is a John Maxwell Team Certified Trainer, Coach, Mentor, and Speaker, and an active member of the International Coaching Federation. He is a native of Richmond, Virginia. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration and Management from Virginia Commonwealth University. He is an ordained minister by the Church of God Ministries Incorporated, located in Anderson, Indiana, and has held multiple leadership positions at the local, regional, national, and international levels, including senior pastor. His best-selling books on the topics of faith, book marketing, writing, men, success, finance, blended families, and leadership have 31 literary awards since 2001. Leadership with a Servant's Heart series was a 2-time Amazon new release bestseller. He shares leadership tips twice per month on the Words of Wisdom Champion podcast that is distributed by Elite Conversations Media Worldwide. He has been married to his wife, Gail, for 31 years. They live in Clarksville, Maryland, and from their union, raised 3 sons. Please help me welcome Mr. Kevin Wayne Johnson.
All right. What an introduction. Wow. I was like, I got to meet this guy.
Oh, Mr. Johnson, such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I appreciate that. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. Everything as well. Happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday to you as well. I appreciate that. Well, let me ask you a quick question. Every time I see your name, Kevin Wayne Johnson, I tend to think of Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. Do you get that a lot?
Not so much now. I would say maybe when I was a little bit younger, I got it some. But the history behind my full name is I lost my mom to pancreatic cancer a good little while ago, a little bit over 20 years ago. And it's something that always reminds me of her because she used to always call me Kevin Wayne. And she was the only person in the family that did that. Everybody else called me Kevin, or they called me KJ, or they called me Kev. But she would refer to me as Kevin Wayne. And then also when I became an author, because I've been writing for 23 years on different topics that you listed, I use my full name because Kevin Johnson without the middle name is a relatively common name like
Right.
Robert Smith. And I wanted to distinguish between myself and other authors that are out there. So that's just a little bit of history behind the Kevin Wayne Johnson.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Mr. Johnson, please share a little bit about your background, where you're from, and when you started your leadership journey. I know I talked a little bit about it in your bio, but in your own words, who is Kevin Wayne Johnson?
Well, I'm a native of Richmond, Virginia, going all the way back to my great-grandparents on both my maternal and my paternal side. So we have deep roots in Richmond. I went to Richmond Public Schools. I have one brother, and we're the sons of a U.S. Marine, my dad, and my mom worked with the federal government as a civil servant. Fast forward, I attended Virginia Commonwealth University right there in Richmond. They gave me a shot. I was an average high school student. And so Virginia Commonwealth University gave me a shot. I was able to stay home, able to continue to work, which was a real blessing for me. And then after I graduated, I matriculated to the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area, where I met this young lady who also attended Virginia Commonwealth University, but I didn't know her in college. We know all the same people, but we didn't know each other in college. We met after college at one of our annual reunion events in the Washington, D.C. area. Fell in love, got married, and from our union had 3 sons, Kevin, Chris, and Cameron. And so what's unique about my story, and this is what I tell everybody as it relates to leadership, I encourage all of us as aspiring leaders and seasoned leaders to be open to get to know your people and allow yourself to be open so they can get to know you. So I have one sibling, no sisters, just one brother, 3.5 years younger than me. Both of us were born on a U.S. Marine base, me, Quantico, Virginia, my brother, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. He was born with a mental disability. And so as a young child, 3.5 years old, while dad was away fighting in America's wars, Vietnam twice, Okinawa, Japan once, I was at home as a young boy helping my mom to raise my mentally challenged and disabled younger brother. I had to negotiate for him. I had to fight for him. I had to advocate for him, serve him, love him, support him. And it taught me so much about leadership before kindergarten that I was kind of well on my way and on a trajectory and wasn't even aware. I mean, how could I be aware at 3.5, 4 years old about what the future is going to hold in terms of me becoming a leader? Fast forward, I transitioned into the workplace after graduating from college. I was one of 25 interns that was hired nationally into the Department of Defense. Went to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for a full year of on-the-job training and classroom training as preparation. And because I'm in this intern program that has national implications, I'm promoted 4 years consecutively, non-competitively, into my very first frontline leadership position. So I started very early in the workplace, 24, 25, 26 years old, leading people, leading programs, leading projects, leading contracts. And then toward the latter part of my career, I had an opportunity to serve as a chief of staff just before I retired over a 34-year career. And that was really instrumental in terms of me moving now in this season into the area of leadership development and executive coaching. The 3 sons that we have, the youngest son, Cameron, unbeknownst to us, wasn't talking like he should for his first 2 years. So we had him diagnosed. We asked the doctor to check him out. What's going on? Give him a thorough evaluation. Talk to us. Let us know what's going on in his life. And at 24 months, he was diagnosed with autism. So here we go again, right? Wash, rinse, and repeat. I just lived this, and here we go again. So as a father, I have a responsibility to negotiate on behalf of my son, fight for him, advocate, serve, love, support. And it's been my life's journey. So moving into leadership for me was a little bit easier, not so complex, because I learned early on around the values of respect and care and honor and value and empathy and compassion, because I had to deliver it at home, and it just transitioned in the workplace. But the challenge that I ran into is that now I'm starting to see so many other people in leadership positions that don't get it. They don't get it. The pink elephant in the room is people wondering how their leader is going to treat them. Are they going to listen? Are they going to value that I'm even here? Do my opinions matter? That's really what's on the heart and minds of people that we are entrusted to lead. I learned it early. Many leaders learn it late. An equal number of leaders never learn it at all. Yeah.
First, thank you to your father for his service to this country. Second of all, thank you for your vulnerability and your inspiring story, sharing stories about not only your brother, but also one of your sons. I really appreciate that. It's very inspiring, right? Leading from your heart and being compassionate and empathetic to those who may not be like you. And we see a disdain, unfortunately, in many organizations. I'm sure you have seen it. I'm sure you can attest to that. I have certainly seen it in my career, where individuals who may not look like you, may not behave like you, they may be a little different than you, and they're treated differently, maybe sometimes alienated. And I live in Florida, and in the Southeast region, you have a supermarket that's called Publix. I love because their motto is where shopping is a pleasure, right? One of the things I do like about Publix supermarkets is that they do hire people with special needs, and they actually cultivate them, and they treat them like they're part of the team. And a lot of people who are listening to this episode and they live or reside in the Southeast region, and they're familiar with Publix supermarkets. And this, I'm not advocating for Publix. I'm just sharing what I've experienced for the last 15 years being here in the South, in Florida specifically. And that's what I have seen. And they have been treated like family members, treated like they are truly a part of the team. And they really advocate on behalf of those individuals. So I applaud you and I thank you for sharing that inspiring story. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not intended to draw attention to oneself. What it does is it's an object lesson for leaders to consider. Because, all of us are created to be relational. And what that means is that every person, all 8 billion plus people on the planet, have a desire to be involved with some type of a real, authentic relationship with others. Everybody wants that. And because we're created to be relational, what better way to build your team and to have some good camaraderie and good morale and good culture where you work, since you're there so much, than to get to know one another and make a connection and find common ground and build some bridges. And so it sounds simple, but because of the human element, we get in the way and we make it very complex.
Right.
I've been a huge advocate of every organization that I've had the pleasure of being able to lead, from my deputy to my chief operating officer, my HR director, and all the way down to the office assistant. We've made an effort to make sure that we have healthy professional relationships one with another, and to really dive into the concept around team, which is together everyone achieves more. So it's a journey. It takes time, and I'm not saying it's easy,
Right.
But we have strategies and principles that have been proven to work over decades. If leaders would choose to apply them and make them happen, they'll see a big difference.
Absolutely. You reminded me of one thing I read in Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last. I want to share this real quick because while you were speaking, I pulled this out real quick. And this is something I thought was very profound. And a couple of years ago when I read this, I actually highlighted this in the book. Every single employee is someone's son or someone's daughter. Parents work to offer their children a good life and a good education and to teach them the lessons that will help them grow up to be happy, confident, and able to use all their talents they were blessed with. Those parents then hand their children over to a company with a hope the leaders of that company will exercise the same love and care as they have. It is we, the companies, who are now responsible for these precious lives. And forgive me, I should be wearing my glasses. I hate wearing my glasses, my reading glasses, but I have to do that. So what do you think about that? And it resonates deeply with what you're saying, because I agree. A lot of times we go into organizations where you have individuals in leadership positions. And I say leadership positions because I'm the staunch believer that just because you're in a leadership position doesn't make you a leader. Do you have the characteristics? Are you the embodiment of what true leadership entails? And we can talk about that for 10 hours, if plus. But if everything that you're demonstrating doesn't equate to leadership, what is real leadership? So the disconnect that I see in a lot of organizations is that they don't understand what leadership is. Their comprehension and definition of leadership is I'm in a position of authority that makes me a leader, and that's it. But we know that's totally contrary to the fact. So again, looking at it from that perspective, and I think about your book also, tell us a little bit about that. Why do so many leaders believe just because they're in a leadership position, that entitles them to the role of quote unquote leader?
Because they skipped a key portion of the process, and that is training. It's not unusual in the workplace, whether it's government, city, county, state, or federal, corporations, small, medium, or large, nonprofits, churches, academic institutions, 2-year community colleges, or 4-year accredited colleges and university. And there's many other institutions on the spectrum that I didn't name, but that's where the majority of people work in the marketplace.
Right.
We have been led to believe that that man or that woman who is an expert at what they do, they're super good. They know what they're doing. They understand that position like the back of their hand. They could quote it. They could do it with a blindfold on. Well, let's give them a standing ovation. That does not mean that you are equipped, prepared, or ready to now lead people.
Right.
Your job, and this is something that I learned from Simon, your job as a leader, although we know you can do it, your job is to develop and provide resources and training opportunities and coaching and mentoring to those that you're leading so that they can become an expert at what they do. Now, I know from time to time we have to roll up our sleeves and get stuff done because of an emergency or something might pop up that you might have a quick turnaround and we have to get it done. But by and large, that is no longer your role. As a leader, we have to inspire, we have to motivate, we have to encourage, we have to show them the way, we have to be the example, we are the role model. And if we show up every day with the mindset that me and only me can do this job, then we're not leading people. It's a different ball game. And there's a lot of organizations out here. And guess what? It's not anyone's particular fault that this happens. But our job is just to heighten the level of awareness to say, this is what's taking place. Now, this is what we need to do to remedy that. We need to put people in a position where they can succeed when they do move into a leadership position, because it's different. Now you're evaluating other people's performance. Now you're giving feedback, you're redirecting or you're reinforcing. If you're redirecting by saying, excellent, you're on the right path. or you're redirecting, saying you need to go left because you're going right. So you're going to reinforce or you're going to redirect as a part of your feedback. You're holding people accountable as a leader. And accountability goes both ways. When people are doing well, let them know they're doing well, because we don't want them to feel like they're being taken for granted. But when they're not quite carrying their pail of water, we don't necessarily want to belittle and reprimand, but we want to provide opportunities to get better. And that's the developmental assignments, the resources, and the other training opportunities. So that's what's taking place. I saw it and I still see it today, where it's not unusual in an organization where leadership will elevate somebody because they do really, really good work in their current position. And now they elevate them to the next level where they're now responsible for overseeing and leading 8 people, 10 people, 15 people, but they haven't received the training on how to do it. And it becomes a disaster real quick.
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head. Training. I've seen a lot of organizations that actually don't have any training, or the training consists of, all right, I've been in a leadership position for X amount of years, and I'm going to show you how it's done. I'm going to show you the way. And they lead based on what they believe or perceive leadership is supposed to be. Right. So that's one of the issues. And then you do have some organizations who do have leadership development programs. The problem with the development leadership programs for some of these organizations is that they don't have outside facilitators like yourself coming in, designing those programs. They kind of like create a cookie cutter approach. And I actually mentioned this in one of my books that's coming out. And they put together kind of like a soup or salad, if you will, of what they believe that people should know in terms of leadership. And a lot of times they miss the mark. The other issue too is that they don't have those individuals who can facilitate those discussions and those classes and workshops around leadership to truly get to the root of what leadership entails and how to carry it out on a daily basis. Well, one of the other things you talked about is leading from the heart, right? And that leads us to your book. And I'm going to put on my reading glasses down. You have 9 literary awards in 2020 and 2021 for your book, Leadership with a Servant's Heart, Leading in Your Workplace. After reading your book, I could see why. It was very hard for me to put it down. And I actually wanted to just talk to you about the whole book. We can't. We don't have time.
Understood.
But I really wanted to. But because it's amazing with the information that you incorporate in your book. And I just talk really fast about a few things that actually delves into what we were just talking about a moment ago. One of the things you mentioned in your book is that in 2021, more than 4.4 million Americans left their jobs due to varying levels of dissatisfaction. Okay? That has also become known as the Great Resignation. I like that, because if you know anything about the Great Migration,
Exactly.
I love the fact you said the Great Resignation. And Harvard Business Review, they did a study based on a study of human resources managers and directors from various industries to address the issues on how to retain talent and why people are leaving in droves. I thought that was astounding as well. And it says here, the people are the most precious resource. As companies compete to attract and retain talent, company culture is becoming increasingly important selling points for employees. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the end in mind. The human resource is always the most valuable resource, always.
Right.
Because there's this fine line between recruitment and retention and how it ultimately impacts the organization. So our colleagues in the human resource profession will attest that they spend so much time, so much effort, and so much dollars in recruiting the best and brightest applicant pool that's out there in the marketplace, from recent college graduates all the way up to seasoned pros and everybody in between. There's a lot of effort that goes into that. I used to oversee human resources as a chief of staff. Lots of effort. What an organization should be doing is being laser focused on those efforts and how, as an organization, they can help and they can aid and align with now retaining the talent that's been recruited. Because going back to your point, as you read the data and the statistics, and I do a great deal of study on this, more and more organizations are faced with post-pandemic people voting with their feet. And what that means is they quit and go find something else. And you combine that with the fact that there are 5 generations of people in the workplace at the same time. And because of what's going on across America, as we've transitioned from the agricultural age to the industrial age and now the technology age, all of these generations think and act, process information, make decisions, and solve problems a little bit differently than the generation behind them or the generation before them. That's not pointing the fingers or faulting anyone, but there's a lot of complexities going on in the workplace today, lots of them. Not to mention where we're working now, where there's so much hybrid in terms of the environment. Half the people are in the office, half the people are working remotely. The people that are working remotely are very, very vocal about wanting to remain remote because I get a lot of work done and I don't have to sit on the highways and sit in traffic. And daycare has now been reduced because I can be available to watch my children. It just goes on and on and on. And so we're trying our best to encourage organizations to partner more with human resources, because the human resource is the most valuable resource in any organization. Treat them right, treat them good. Now, there's no perfect remedy and there's no cookie cutter approach, because you can still treat some people very, very good and they still complain. That's just the heart and soul of America, right? Americans complain more than any other group of people around the earth. And it's because we have access to some, we have such an abundance of everything. If one little thing doesn't go right, we complain about it. But if we focus on that as a means to running a much more efficient organization, that's going to be a big help. The other thing that we want to be very, very clear about is really helping these leaders and these organizations to understand the importance of budgeting some dollars for training. Because you'll be surprised at how much people want to learn and want to know more. People are like sponges. They want this information. They want to do better. But oftentimes the dollars don't necessarily go to that particular bucket. But what we emphasize as best we can is say, look at what happened here with this subject matter expert who was promoted, and now they're responsible for leading 13 people, and it's not quite working out that well. I'm not pointing the finger at you per se, but I want you to think, and I want you to be a little bit more observant as it relates to, these are some steps we could have taken to make that much smoother. And that's often how we're able to get organizations to change their mind and increase their training budget from $8,000 a year to $80,000 a year, because it does make a difference. And that return on investment has everything to do, just like we started our conversation, being able to retain this good talent that the human resource professionals are often out there trying to recruit. And it makes a huge, huge difference.
And you know what, being that you were talking about leadership development training, leadership development organizations spend billions of dollars every year training their staff. The problem that I see is that you have a lot of organizations, when they put forth leadership development training programs, what qualitative, quantitative, and metrics and measures are you putting forth to determine the reinforcement of the training? Because again, systemically, we see organizations everywhere. You can have great training, but then what's the takeaway? How am I incorporating that in my daily leadership walk, so to speak?
Yeah. You've got to have an action plan. So that's number one. You've got to have a written action plan that reinforces to every leader what they have learned, what has been discussed. So that's number one. Number two is the training sessions have to be very interactive. The last thing that any organization wants to do is to have a person standing in front of a group of adults lecturing to them. Adults do not like to be lectured. You have to make these very, very interactive. We use videos and we have a conversation. We use selected exercises around strategic goal setting. What is it that you will tolerate and what do you not tolerate? What are your core values? I mean, we kind of unpack that and we get into it by way of different exercises. And these are written exercises that they can take back with them and take a look at. And then the other thing that we do is in the midst of the training sessions is the interaction in the smaller groups. You know, like when you train virtually, we're all familiar with breakout rooms, whether it's Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Cisco WebEx, Adobe Connect. I use all of these different technology platforms. But when we're in person, we need to do that too, where you have an opportunity for some of the men and women leaders to get together in smaller groups and have a conversation around a particular case study and make it real and set the tone in the very beginning so that everyone feels comfortable in sharing what's on their heart and what's on their mind and knowing that it will be held in confidence. If we see more of an approach using that methodology, we tend to get much better results in terms of return on investment. And the reason that we always incorporate an action plan is because 3 months from now, we can take a look based on the action plan and see how a leader is doing. 6 months from now, we can do the same. 9 months from now, and a year from now as well, as opposed to everyone just filling out a survey or an evaluation to say, yeah, this was great training, and then that's it, and we never see each other again. So we like to do the follow-up. The follow-up is very powerful. And then one more thing that we always interject with the training sessions are different types of assessments, whether it's DISC, emotional intelligence, a leadership self-assessment, a leadership 360, because they get a nice, robust 20-plus page report that kind of walks them through the results from the assessment. And then we incorporate that as a part of the training as well. So all of these different tools and tips and nuggets that we incorporate kind of help to give the person a total view of their leadership, not just one particular view of their leadership in terms of what's happening here with their subject matter expertise, their acumen, and their intelligence, but equally important, what's happening here in the heart.
Right.
Are they demonstrating compassion? Are they demonstrating empathy? Do they care? Do they value the people? Do they respect the people? Those are matters that come from the heart. And I always remind my leaders all the time, I've been doing this for decades, being compassionate and empathetic as a leader does not make you weak. It makes you human. And again, going back to our earlier conversation, that's the real elephant in the room. People want to know that when I voice my opinion, my leader's going to listen and not cut me off and not change the subject. Even if they can't implement or execute, at least they'll hear me out. They're going to give a care that I showed up today, right? I'm going to contribute to this team and to this organization. I'm going to be valued. That's really what people are looking for. That not so much what we know and how well we speak and how much influence we hold. That's not really it. That's expected, quite frankly. I call that foundational. The real measure is our ability to influence and get people to move out on their gifts and their talents. And I'm telling you, it needs to be taught. I know there's a saying that, oh yeah, he's a born leader. She's a born leader. I believe that. I do believe that many people are born leaders. I believe that. But guess what? They have to be cultivated. They have to be shaped. They have to be trained. They need mentors and coaches in their life to mold. You know, we're all clay and we need to be molded. So that person that's not molded and not shaped, even though they were born a leader, they will abuse and misuse their authority. And that's when people vote with their feet.
That's amazing. Yep. Michael Jackson was a gifted singer, but he still also had training, right? He was an amazing dancer, but he also had training as well.
Absolutely.
So I do believe what you're saying is that you do have people who have the natural, innate ability to lead, but they still need to be cultivated. That doesn't mean that if you don't have the innate ability to lead, that you still cannot lead. You can be trained to lead, but you do have others who have that natural ability. And the prime example, I can think of someone who had that natural, innate ability to lead. Actually, I have a whole bunch in my mind, but the first one that pops in my head is the late, great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Also, General Colin Powell. One of the things you also talked about, again, is leading from your heart. And you talked about leadership development programs and training. And one thing I noticed is that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of your signature trainings when you provide trainings to an organization is leadership with a servant's heart. Is that based off the book as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because we really want leaders to understand this premise. And again, it's very core to how all of us are created. Every one of us across the entire globe are created to be relational. And when we don't forge and take the first step to create and generate and establish a relationship with those that we're leading, unbeknownst to us, we're limiting their potential. We're limiting their genius, their creativity, their ingenuity, because people want to be a part of something bigger than them. And so that's a matter of the heart. That has nothing to do with how much we know, our intellect, our IQ. It has to do with our emotional quotient, our EQ. And that's why there's so much emphasis over these past 15 years or so as it relates to the workplace on emotional intelligence. That's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, yeah.
But people want to know, and this is another reason why there's so much discussion on DEI, as many organizations and some of our governments around the country are fighting against it. It's inevitable because people do want to be included and they're looking for equity. Remember, we spend so much time together at work. They're looking for that when they don't get it and they don't feel that they're having that reciprocal relationship, people kind of clam up and they go into their own little corner. And that's part of human behavior. But it's a matter of the heart, because from the heart is where we can demonstrate what we feel on the inside ultimately will come out on the outside. And so the respect for other people, showing that we value them, letting them know that we give a care, that they showed up today, honoring their gifts and their talents, because everyone brings something unique to the team and to the organization, and just being understanding. And what I mean by that's where the compassion and the empathy comes through. Understanding the pressure of people that are taking care of elderly parents. Understanding the pressure that goes with being out there on the highways and byways for 90 minutes commuting to get to the office. 90-minute one-way commute every day. Just being empathetic and compassionate and understanding that somebody has a health condition that they're dealing with, a sickly child, issues with finding affordable childcare. I mean, these are real issues that people deal with. And for a leader to not understand and not have any empathy around what you're dealing with is just really inhumane, quite frankly. And I've shared that with leaders across the board, because I said, how would you feel if somebody did that to you? And I usually get silence. Mm-hmm. Or somebody inevitably will raise their hand and said, it has happened to me. Now we're on our way to having a great conversation, because I will pause and ask them, to the extent that you're comfortable, please share. And usually when you say it that way, and they'll start to share, and then the other leaders will hear from one of their colleagues who is now a leader, but on their way to get there, how they were treated,
Right.
it gives them second thoughts on, oh, I need to take care of my people. So
Right.
these are the types of things that come out in these training sessions. And that's why they're so powerful and so impactful. We make them all interactive so that we can bring up these types of real life issues to help
Right.
people understand the importance of this topic of leadership.
Right. But based on your experience, what prevents leaders from leading from the heart? Because I also see a lot of times, and you also alluded to this also, you may have someone in a leadership role today.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't always in a leadership role,
Mm-hmm.
right? How did they feel when they were a follower or just an organizational line member or staff member?
Yeah.
And then when you see those individuals transition into a quote unquote leadership position, they tend to look at the followers very differently than how they view themselves. Like they can talk to these individuals any way they want, and they should understand that because I'm the leader and this is how we communicate. What prevents leaders from leading from the heart?
I think it's a combination of them thinking, whether someone has told them that or not, they're thinking that productivity and performance is the name of the game. And that's how I am measured on my success as a leader. And so not realizing, and this is not a blanket statement, it's not a universal statement, but it does apply to many, not realizing that it's the relationship that we develop with people where we can move from directing to now asking, and people will gladly get it done. That's the difference. When I'm working for a leader who I know doesn't know what they're doing, but I can't say anything because they're responsible for my annual performance appraisal, and I'm trying to get a good one so I can get out of that organization, what I'm thinking is that, wow, they don't even understand. If they would just take the time to get to know me a little bit better, they would probably be very surprised at how much we have in common. They might have 3 sons like me. They might be from Richmond, Virginia, like me. Their dad might be serving in the Marines or in one of the armed services like mine. You'll be surprised what happens when you break down those barriers and you start to have a conversation with each other and you get to know each other and you develop those professional relationships on the job, how much we have in common. I love spaghetti and meatballs with angel hair. And that same person might like it. I'd love some I'm bringing some humor into it because I believe that we can have fun and be productive and perform at a very high level because the environment is conducive. The morale is perfect. The environment is comfortable. People can be their best. They want to be their best and go above and beyond. So that's what I mean by being able to transition from directing people to just asking people.
Right.
And that's why this process, I call it a process, this leadership journey, that's the other word I use as well. When you go from the person that's doing it and doing it well and being recognized by your leadership for now elevation to the next level, now you're overseeing others. Your job is now to get them everything they need so they can get to your level one day, right? And you do that by taking the time to get to know them and then being open enough for them to get to know you. And now we're well on our way to having a really, really great organization where people want to show up and they want to contribute and they want to participate.
Wow. And those are some amazing tidbits on how leaders can develop a leader's heart. But what are some other things that leaders can incorporate in order to develop a leader's heart?
Well, I think it's really just a matter of, number one, being able to see other leaders in action that get it. Because oftentimes, because we are role models and because we are examples, people are looking to emulate what good leadership is all about. So kind of being on our P's and Q's to make sure that we actually do what we want those coming behind us to do by watching and seeing what's going on. But I think the other thing is really, really key is taking that first step and having a conversation with people on the team. It's the conversation part when we talk to each other. That's what really leads to forging good relationships.
Right.
And then once you forge those good relationships, then that leads to trust. And all of this is a matter of the heart, because you have to have the will to want to do this. And you don't have to be a people person, and you can be an introvert in a leadership position, but just understand the nuances in terms of how to motivate and how to encourage and how to inspire people. And again, it's relational, and you don't have to get real personal with it. Keep it professional, but get to know your people, and having them get to know us is a matter of the heart, not so much a matter of the head.
Right. On a human and personal level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You'd be
Right.
pleasantly surprised. Again, three things happen. Number one, we connect. We find out all these things that we have in common, and it breaks the ice and it lowers all the barriers. Number two, we find common ground, right? There's so many similarities that we have, whether it's from the same city or the same neighborhood or knowing some of the same people. And then number three, we build bridges. We can build some things. We can, as a team, we can build together, have a tactical outlook, but at the same time, a strategic outlook as well. Those three things happen in those type of environments, and it's the leader's responsibility to make it happen.
Right. Right. And I believe the heart is your compass anyway. We all know right from wrong. It's a matter of what you also said, whether or not we want to do the right thing. And I know there's some leaders out there, they know what's right and they want to do the right thing, but sometimes they just don't feel like doing it. So if they don't feel like doing it, I feel that they should not be in a leadership position, because you're in a position to make a difference. It's not self-aggrandizing. You're not in a leadership position because of, look what I can do, I'm making more money. Certainly those are things that can be part of leadership, to bring your talents, your knowledge, your skills, your gifts to the table, but also helping to inspire individuals as well. But at the end of the day, I think it has more to do with making a difference. And if you're not willing to make a difference and put your personal feelings aside, because I've seen a lot of leaders who create cliques also with the people that they admire, that they like. Look, we all have people that we admire more than others, but at the end of the day, if you're in a leadership position, you're the leader of the people.
Yep. Absolutely. Well said. Well said. And I'm glad you mentioned a little bit earlier, you said some leaders just don't want to. And I'm glad you didn't say all leaders around the right and wrong. Remember now, we are living in a nation right now where a lot of people do think that what is wrong is right, and what is right is wrong. So we do have to be weary of that, unfortunately, where there are a number of people, I would include leaders as well, they know better, but they do it anyway, because you mentioned they want to stay in that clique.
Right. Right. So what happens to organizations that they feel have applied their heart in leading followers?
Well, I think you're going to see a difference. I think you're going to see people that are willing to be a little bit more vocal. They're going to be a little bit more willing to offer their opinions and insights in terms of helping the organization get better and do better. I think people are going to be more willing to help that organization be able to achieve a much higher rate of retention. And I think absenteeism goes way down, because people actually want to come and they want to contribute because they know they'll be heard. See, when a person is heard, even if their idea is not implemented, the fact that they've been heard and they weren't cut off and the subject wasn't changed and they were allowed to finish, we send a subliminal message to them that what they have to say matters. And that's very important. That's another matter of the heart. That's very important to people. But when you see people who constantly get interrupted while they're trying to make a point, or somebody changing the subject on them, that's very hurtful. And you can see their body language. It minimizes their ability to be impactful for the organization. And then after a while, if it continues, they'll either clam up or they'll vote with their feet. You're dealing with the human element. You're dealing with people. They're not just workers. And it takes time for some leaders to understand that. But once they gravitate toward that, and you have more and more that think that way within a given organization, that organization is on its way to being very prosperous and developing a reputation in the marketplace of being a magnet. That's where people want to go and work and be a part of. They want to be a part of that family. And that's a good thing.
Right. And one of the things in your book you talked about is praying for your leaders. We need to pray for our leaders, not only in government, but leaders with whom we work.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important because oftentimes leaders don't know what they don't know. And leaders don't see themselves the way others see them. And if we see something, or if we perceive something, or we're able to catch on to something that's good and we want it to continue, or something that's going south and we want it to stop, taking the time to pray for them can be very, very beneficial, not just for them, but for the team that they're leading and for the entire organization. And so we live in a time where all of us are in a pocket where we don't know what we don't know, and somebody coming alongside of us to usher in a prayer or to give us a kind word or to give us some advice is very, very valuable in terms of our day-to-day operation. So I'm a big believer in prayer. I'm a big believer in praying and advocating for others, even when they don't think they need it or even know that they need it, because none of us see ourselves the way others see us. We call those blind spots. And when somebody sees a blind spot in me, if they can pull me to the side and give me what I call a correction session, then I'm all for it. And I'm a big believer in that.
One of the things we like to do on this podcast is share resources. So that's one resource. Another resource, because we're talking about servant leadership, I think is befitting that we should say that the author or the creator of Servant Leadership was Robert K. Greenleaf. He actually authored the book Servant Leadership, and it was required reading for me in my undergrad studies. And actually, Robert K. Greenleaf, he used Jesus as a model. At least that's my interpretation. This is going back some time.
Yeah.
But from what I can recall, he used Jesus as a model of servant leadership, how to serve employees and put your self-interest as a leader aside, but to elevate and cultivate and nurture your followers.
Yep, absolutely. So the greatest example that we have in Scripture that goes along with Greenleaf's example is that when Jesus hand-selected disciples that he decided that he would mentor, he would coach, he would train, and he would teach, he also, at a point in his earthly ministry, got on his knees and washed their feet. The ultimate sign of service, because they even asked, well, why are you washing my feet? And so that's where that servant comes from. And you'll also find it in terms of a leadership style. Jesus served so many, whether he was praying for someone who was sick, whether he was turning something that was a very, very small quantity into a large quantity to feed people. I mean, the examples go on and on and on. A heart to serve. And that's where the concept around leadership with a servant's heart comes into play, because the leadership part has us thinking about the mind, how intelligent we are and the acumen and the subject matter expertise. But with a servant's heart, now you have the other people that you're leading, you have them in mind. And so you will serve them, provide resources for them, give them training opportunities, make sure they have the tools and the systems that they need to be successful, the assignments that they're ready for. All of that goes into the servant's heart. And so when Greenleaf uses Jesus as the example, it reminds us throughout Scripture, especially Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where he's constantly demonstrating how you go about serving people. And it just opens up your eyes and it brings a smile to your face to say, you know what? I can do that in the workplace. It doesn't make me weak. It makes me human. And again, that's why I always tell people it's the pink elephant in the room.
Right.
Most people are hesitant to bring up for a lot of different reasons, mostly retaliation and retribution. But they just want to know, this man and woman that just showed up in my organization who's going to be leading us, are they even going to recognize the fact that I'm here? Are they going to give me the benefit of the doubt? They're going to give me some key assignments, or am I going to get the crummy assignments? Are they going to listen to me? Are they going to value my opinion and my thoughts on how we can move this organization forward? That's what Jesus was sharing with us, with that servant's heart mindset. So where the two align, where the mind and the heart aligns, I believe, and this is what I've been teaching for many decades, now we're on our way to having and developing great leaders, because great leaders help to make the world a much better place.
Excellent. Excellent. And so on that note, what's the biggest takeaway you hope our listeners learn today?
Well, I've developed a model. I'm in the process of having it trademarked. So tell your listeners they can't use it. But one of the main reasons I do what I do, in addition to everything that you've heard, from my personal story to what's going on in the workplace and the work that I'm doing now in this season of life, I want all of us, wherever you are on the spectrum, an aspiring leader, a seasoned leader, wherever you might be, I want you to do three things. I want you, first of all, to know better. I want you to understand the precepts, the concepts, the doctrine, the methodology, the theory behind leadership, leading people. And then based on what you know, the second thing I want you to do is, now I want you to do better. That means apply what you have learned, apply what you know. Know better, then do better, so that when it's all said and done, every one of us will lead better. And that is, again, I present everything that I do in a very simplistic way, because that's how I'm wired. I unravel and unpack the complex and the complicated and make it as simple as possible. But you never hear me say it's easy, because you're dealing with people. The biggest challenge and the hardest part about leadership is people. Personalities, right? Personal agendas, all kind of stuff going on in the heart and minds of people. So I'm never saying it's easy, but it's definitely doable. So know better, do better, lead better.
Love that. Know better, do better, lead better.
I have about 4 of these. I'm in the process of getting all of them trademarked.
Excellent.
So you can't use them.
Oh, we're not going to use that. We don't want to do that. And if you feel like you want to use it, you have to give credit. Okay, reference your sources.
And Dr. Ralph, you made a good point. I want to emphasize this just before we finish. You made a great point. So 1970 was the year where Greenleaf kind of introduced this concept around servant leadership. And what's different, and the reason I don't usually reference them, I may reference them maybe once or twice, maybe in an article or a blog, because I'm talking about something a little bit different than servant leadership, because we're focusing on both the mind and the heart. And leadership with a servant's heart emphasizes leadership, of course, but we want our leaders to do it with the heart of a servant. And it's a little bit different than servant leadership, because I put just as much emphasis on the heart as I do on the mind. And that's sort of the slight difference between the two. But it is amazing. There's a ton of material out here in the marketplace around this topic of servant leadership, but very little when it comes to leadership with a servant's heart. It is just a little bit different, slightly different. And I overemphasize the heart on all of my book covers. I'm really intentional on that, because I want to focus in on that. We have a propensity to believe that serving people makes us weak. And I put a lot of emphasis on the fact that the leader is not a doormat. The leader does not have to tiptoe to the tulips, and the leader does not have to walk on eggshells. We are responsible to hold people accountable and to give people feedback. So we can't shy away from that. But what's wrong with being kind and gentle and empathetic and compassionate when it comes to people? Because we're
Right.
all dealing with something.
Absolutely.
And that does not make you weak. It makes you human, like I said a little bit earlier. And that's really the point around servant's heart.
Yeah. And even while you were speaking, what came to my mind was Dr. Miles Monroe. In his book, The Spirit of Leadership, he actually talks about servant leadership as being one of the core tenets of developing the spirit of leadership. So what you just said is so profound. Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate that. So where can listeners learn more about you?
Well, the name of my company is the Johnson Leadership Group. And so our website is www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. And email address is kevin@thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. And all of our information in terms of what we provide in terms of training and coaching, our events calendar, your 20-minute complimentary coaching session, our credentials, our testimonials from clients, the different clients that we've served over the years. All that information is there when you look us up. And we have a company policy that when people reach out to us, we always respond within 48 hours. So phone number is there as well in case people might want to call. And so we're here and available to serve and ready to serve. If anybody's interested in learning more, just reach out and touch, and we'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Well, I appreciate it because I feel like I can talk to you honestly for like another 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 hours.
Okay.
You know, because it's been a very enriching and robust discussion for sure. And this is a topic that more people need to be aware of, especially if you're in a leadership position or just aspiring to become a leader. So I appreciate that. And thank you so much, Mr. Johnson, for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us about leading with a servant's heart. Thank you so much.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been my pleasure and honor talking with you today, and I thank you. But before we go, also don't forget to purchase Dr. Johnson's books on Amazon. And for more information about this podcast, books, workshops, and training programs, be sure to visit my website at www.drhspeaks.com. I also want to take this opportunity to thank you, the viewers, for your support and making this podcast possible. It is always a pleasure having you as part of the family. Until the next time, be well, God bless, and lead on.